Hello, my name is Josephine Young, and today I shall be presenting my persuasive speech to my live audience, which is my younger sister Grace, 3 adults from my church, which is Miss Abby, Mr. John, and Mr. Victor. So, for my persuasive speech, I have chosen the topic racism to inform you about. So the general purpose of my speech will be to inform you and to persuade you, but more specifically, I'm hoping to inform you about racism and to persuade you on why it is such a big problem and why we as Christians should minimize it as much as possible. So imagine you walk into a bookstore and you go in to get only the books with red covers, which seems weird, but no matter the plot, no matter the genre, you pick the books with only red covers. But this doesn't seem very logical, so reimagine yourself walking to that same bookstore, but instead you choose the books that have no matter the plot, no matter the genre, you will choose the ones that you like, no matter the cover, too. And in a sense, this is more logical, but it also is a reflection of what racism can be like. So racism is a major problem still that affects many of us in our lives, whether we realize it or not. And even though I was born an American, my parents are Chinese Indonesian. And so although I have not been actively judged for my ethnicity, I have still felt the effects of racism. So my thesis statement today is that even though we live in a better world today, some problems that have existed in the past unfortunately still exist today, such as racism. But by showing God's love for everyone, no matter their skin color, we can help others to see how God loves everyone and has made them the way He wants them to be. So this brings me to my first point, which is that racism is still alive as it was years ago. So a mistake that many people have made is that because slavery ended in major first world countries such as the US or the UK, that racism has ended with it. But this is a mistake because racism has simply evolved more into a sort of fear, whether people realize it or not. Racism is more of a fear of the unknown because some people may not know more about other people, and this becomes a reflection of what racism is like. They take it out on others. So racism isn't just the discrimination of others because of their skin color, it's also the taking out because they're afraid. So my parents had grown up experiencing some forms of racism, as my dad was an Asian American growing up as an immigrant, and my mom was a Chinese Indonesian who was surprisingly discriminated in Indonesia. So my dad mostly had the Asian jokes, but it was also the teasing of his name. While in comparison, my mom had the racism sort of that Chinese Indonesians weren't allowed to attend some of the universities that were public and government funded. And even though it may not be common today, this is still sort of shows how racism has slightly changed over time. So an example of this is Chloe Bennett from last year. Last year, she had to change her last name from Wang to Bennett because she says that Hollywood was racist and that her last name made other people uncomfortable. And this is an active example of this because whether people realize it or not, they are very influenced by other things, and Hollywood is an example of this. And so whether people realize it, this is what happens. So this brings me to my second point, which is that racism affects people differently. So for me, I have not actively been judged racistly because of my skin color, but I still felt that growing up I still experienced some of that racism because when I was younger I didn't like my look, I didn't enjoy being Asian, and I wanted to have blonde hair and blue eyes, and I wanted to be kind of typical like that. And also when I was growing up I felt like I could only pretend to be Mulan, who is the only Asian Disney princess, because she was the only princess who looked like me. I felt like because of how I looked, I couldn't be or pretend to be Belle or Ariel or anything like that. And I feel this is a very subtle effect of what racism is. It just sort of goes there whether you realize it or not, whether people are judging you actively or not. A very recent example of how racism affects people differently is this. This is a girl named Kezia Dam who was judged because she is a non-Asian who wore a kipao, which is a traditional Chinese dress, to her prom. And there was a massive debate whether she was being racist or not. And I believe that she wasn't really. She was more being quite insensitive, as shown with the photo. But as you can see, a lot of people actually, especially the Chinese people, they didn't find this very racist. They actually found that she looked very beautiful, whereas other people found this very racist. So racism affects people differently because some people will find other things offensive while other people won't find it offensive. And the line where racism is drawn between the two is very indistinguishable. So a mistake that everyone makes is that anyone can be racist. So someone who is a victim of racism can also be racist against other people of color. And I feel like a mistake that people have made is that people of color can be racist toward whites, or anyone can be racist toward whites whether they realize it or not. Because just judging others by false facts on other people's group, like calling people Caucasian, the white people Caucasian, can somewhat be called racist. For example, like saying that all Asians eat dogs or cats or stuff like that. It's just judging based on false facts. And this is also another example of racism, whether people realize it or not. So this brings me to my third point, that we as Christians can minimize the racism that people feel in this world. So racism, unfortunately, is sort of the stereotyping of others, whether they realize it or not. It's a human ability that we've been given to protect ourselves. For example, you see a big predator with giant claws and with big teeth, and you're going to run away from it because you know it's not like one of those house cats. And in a sense, this is what has affected racism, is that the stereotyping of other people and the judging of other people too quickly. So one of the things that we should do is to love others and to not judge. Like many of the examples that you can find in the Bible is Mark 12:31 and Romans 12:10 and Matthew 7:1, which all basically underline that you should love others for who they are and you shouldn't judge others. Because God created everyone to be who they are today. Because in Psalm 131:14, God is basically saying, I have loved you and I made you this way and I want you to be this way. And people shouldn't judge based on what God has made you. An example of judging others too quickly is from 1 Samuel 16:7, in which Samuel the prophet was trying to choose a king of Israel, and he was looking through the son of Jesse, and he kept going from the tallest to the oldest to the most handsome, and he thought, oh, they all must be the new kings. But no, God had chosen David, who was out in the field, who was a shepherd, who was the youngest, and God told him to not judge people by their outward appearance because God judges by the heart. And I believe this is an example we can do as Christians. So what can we do to do this? We can stop stereotyping and judging others so quickly. We can stop assuming false facts about others, groups of people. And we can learn to accept and love others no matter the color of their skin. So today, will you be choosing the books with only red covers, or will you learn not to judge a book by its cover? Thank you.
Thank you very much.